Hello, everyone. We're going to take a closer look this chapter. Here we are in Chapter 4, Lesson 1, at those people who come to America as part of that large workforce. Remember, one of the things that made our economy so very successful in the Second Industrial Revolution, in the Gilded Age, was a large workforce of Americans that were readily available to work in these ever-increasing big businesses. And I want to spend a little time here today talking more about where these folks are coming from, why these folks are coming here, and a little bit more about what they experience. So we've got two essential questions here today that we are going to take a look at. One is, why do people migrate? And you're going to see a common theme here, right? People looking to get away from poverty, social unrest, overpopulation, starvation. And that's going to be no matter where you're coming from. And then we want to take a look here throughout this chapter at the differences between the lives of Americans in cities and the lives of Americans in the country. So you have urban life, city life, country life, rural life. And really what you're going to see here is that in urban life, as we have more and more of these folks coming into America, what we're going to see here is exposure to new cultures, leading to what we're going to call ethnic neighborhoods. So, let's take a look at why it is that people come here. And I want to start with talking about Europeans. And in this case, we're looking at three very particular reasons of why large numbers of European immigrants would come to our country during 1880 to about 1900. And primarily, let's set the stage here. Most of these people are coming from Southern Europe. So I've thrown up a map of Europe here to help you kind of understand immigration to America and what it looked like. In the very, very beginning, immigration to America came from these countries that I was highlighting in blue. And this is not just to America, but to France as well. We were looking at immigrants primarily from, to Canada as well. Primarily from Great Britain, primarily from France, and there were some migrants coming here even from Spain, but not many. So you've got two big countries where most of these immigrants are arriving from. Most of these immigrants are showing up. Then, in the late 1700s, early 1800s, up to about 1860 or so, migrants are arriving from primarily Germany at this point, and a little bit from Austria-Hungary. So by the time we're talking, which is 1870 to 1900, migrants had been from primarily, at least up to this point in time, West Europe. But now, the place that you're going to see immigrants coming from in the Second Industrial Revolution from about 1880 to about 1900, these folks are going to be from Southern Europe, primarily Italy, what we now know as Greece, Serbia, Bulgaria, parts of Russia, along the Black Sea. And essentially, the compass has shifted. No longer are people coming here from West Europe. They're now coming from Southern Europe. And this is a problem because these people have a very different culture than those who live in West Europe. There is a very different way of living, of thinking, of worshiping, of eating, of getting along in Southern Europe than there is in Western Europe. Forget the fact that most of these people coming here were looking to escape poverty. Forget the fact that these people that were coming here were looking to escape social classes. And by that, I'm actually talking about a very specific, very rigid social system where you have kings and queens at the top, right? The nobility. And then you had those people who were wealthy merchants. And then you had the vast majority of people in Europe, the average peasant. okay? What they're trying to get away from those social classes where over here we don't have any of that. We don't have kings and nobility or any of that nonsense, right? We just have people that are average citizens. So they're looking to get away from that poverty, looking to get away from those social classes that made it very hard to move up in the world. And they're looking to escape from, you can see here, these three very, very, very simple things: overpopulation, military service, religious persecution, and high food prices. These things, folks, are the same things that those people in Western Europe wanted to get away from when they were coming over here, whether it was France or English people or Germans. But now what we're looking at then are not the same population of people coming here. Now they're coming from Southern Europe, and people from Western Europe are incredibly angry that these new groups of people, very diverse, very different from them, are arriving in America. And the bottom line is, when you say, okay, so summarize it for me, what do these people from Southern Europe do? Number one, first and foremost, they change the face and the size of American cities. There isn't a thing that they can do more or more important to America than change the cities and the way we look. Because prior to this, most of these people are English-speaking, or at least know English from a second language, or have learned it since their arrival in the country. Most of the people that were there, that had already come to America, were Protestant. They shared a certain kind of Christianity. It's what being Protestant means. And now, as we get this huge influx from Southern Europe, they are bringing with them a whole host of different native languages, of different faiths, food, and even things and ways of reading with ethnic newspapers. And they make up a large portion of America's urban city population. And that's not just from 1880 to 1900, folks. We're talking about 1880 to the present. These large groups of immigrants come to our cities looking for jobs, looking to escape poverty, looking to escape social classes, looking to escape military service or religious persecution. And when they get into our urban areas, our cities, they are looking for people that are like them, people that speak their language, people that practice their religion, people that eat their food, have the same family structure. And so you're going to see these people begin to congregate into ethnic neighborhoods, neighborhoods of similar sounding and looking people from the same home countries. And we call these ethnic neighborhoods by different names now, right? You may have even been to some of these places. I mean, maybe you've been to Chinatown in any one of America's large cities like New York City or Washington, D.C., a place where the language is still in Chinese, where the decorations and the clothing and the culture is still traditionally Chinese, where the food, the publications are Chinese, right? That's a very different, say, way of living than, in the downtown Manhattan with all the rich and swanky white people, right, from old America. I mean, these ethnic neighborhoods are really different, and it's the same way now, right? Whether we're talking about Asian immigrants from 1880 to immigrants to America today. To prove my point, here is a map from 2010, the most recent census to our country, taking a look at where most of these immigrants are from, okay? So, and where they live now. Take a look at this, right? We'll take a look of New York. This is all New York City, all right? So all of a sudden, right, what do we have here? We have large numbers of Pakistani immigrants in a place called Parkville. Down here, Brighton Beach, you've got what's called Little Odessa. This is where you find a ton of Ukrainians and Russians who have migrated to our countries. Little Odessa. Odessa is a city on the Black Sea in Russia, or Ukraine, I should say. Here we have a huge African-American population that belong to Brooklyn in Bedford-Stuyvesant. You've got over here, I should say, huge populations of folks that are coming from Central and South America. In particular, you have a large Nicaraguan, Honduran population in South Jamaica with a number of Hispanic immigrants. You have a high number of Indian immigrants here in Belarus. You have a huge Mexican population here in Queens. You have an entire area of Little Korea, which is exactly what I'm talking about. People from Korea who live in Queens here, Little Korea. You've got Chinatown, the original Chinatown that we were talking about that many of you might have seen before. You have huge populations of folks from the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico in the Bronx and in West Harlem. The point I'm making here is that our cities are still clustered this way. You still have these pockets of people who are from different regions, who speak different languages, have different religions, but people who are coming here for a better life, a new chance at beginning. And where do they come in? Almost all of them pass through Ellis Island. We're going to talk about Ellis Island in more detail tomorrow when we get to class. So don't fret it. But I wanted you to realize that not all Americans enter into or from Ellis, or out of, I should say, Ellis Island. Many others enter, especially if you're from Asia, into what's called Angel Island. And this is an incredible difference when you compare the arrival of Southern Europeans as opposed to Asians that were coming into the West looking for work as laborers, servants, merchants, or on the railroads. In the East, you came in Ellis Island, your wait, assuming you were healthy, was a couple of hours. You went through some interviews, you had your money changed out, you got off onto the boats, you were in America, same day. Here, at Angel Island, very, very different. As you were approaching Angel Island, you would dock up at this pier, and this pier would fill up with people streaming off the boats from Asia, usually China, heading towards this processing station on Angel Island, a little tiny island. And when you would get into this processing station, they would begin to ask you all kinds of questions about where you were from, what family did you have in America, why were you here, how long were you planning to stay. But unlike in the East, where your wait would take a day, here, the wait could last months. America would take these arriving immigrants from China, and when they would ask them these questions in Angel Island, and they would wait to verify all these facts, they were forced to live in these bunks, in these little houses, for months in some cases, separated from family and loved ones, separated from those that they cared about. You would be forced to live in these little tiny cots for months on end with people you didn't know, because America did not want Asian immigrants. We didn't like immigrants of any kind really coming between 1880 and 1900, but we were particularly prejudiced against Asian immigrants who were coming in to do work primarily on the railroads. And we locked them up and made them wait until we could confirm their story, that they were from where they said they were from, that they had relatives or people where they said they were going, that they had some kind of connection here before we would let them into our country. And then if, of course, their story didn't check out, then we would send them back. Asian immigration was much, much harder, much more difficult. And when you combine it with the difficulties of European immigrants as they were coming here, you're going to see America during the Second Industrial Revolution saw an increase in something called nativism. And nativism here is this idea that we're hostile towards immigrants, especially if you're native born. And it had changed over time, whether it was going to be against the Irish or the Germans in the 1850s. And now it was focused on these people coming from Southern Europe, right? These people that are coming from these little tiny, villages in the middle of nowhere. You know, whether you were a Russian, whether you were Jewish, Ukrainian, Greek, Italian, it didn't matter. If you were one of these people, you were the target, right? Especially if you were Jewish or if you were Catholic. Lots of them wouldn't even vote for Catholic immigrants if they were running for office, because they feared the influence of the leader of Christianity called, or the leader of Catholicism called the Pope. So you had a lot of people here that distrusted you if you were coming to America. And they distrusted you because, again, if you're coming from either Eastern or Southern Europe, or if you're coming from Asia, your culture is significantly different than the people who came here before you. Your religion, especially if you were Jewish or Catholic, is significantly different than the people who came here before you. And you have a population of people that don't like immigrants because, an argument you still hear today, they would take jobs. They would work for less pay. So you want people, or you have here immigrants that are hardworking. And isn't that interesting, right? Isn't that what America's about, right? Being hardworking, right? That America's about working hard to get ahead, and you have immigrants that are willing to do that, yet we don't like them for it? Does that strike you as odd? Right? That you have people who are so desperate to come here to escape poverty that they're willing to work for less because they want to make it here, and we say, stop working so hard, immigrant. Doesn't that just strike you as interesting? This nativism that grows up in America, and you're going to see it in all kinds of places and in all kinds of ways, again, focused against culture, religion, and fear of immigrants working for less pay. But the way you see it is interesting, and where you see it is interesting. And the argument that we see at this time is amazingly similar to arguments that we hear today. Here we have Uncle Sam, okay, right, there he is. And he's got his American flag, and he's protecting it right from the shore. Here's the shore of America right here. And he's protecting American ideas and institutions from the riffraff of immigration pouring into our shores. And isn't that the same argument that we hear now, like 130 years later, right? That American ideas and institutions are at risk, whether it's the language of English, whether it's the way people live, the way people think, that these things are at risk from immigrants? If they were at risk then, how can they be at risk now? Right? Do you think something would have happened already? But the fear is that these people who are arriving to America will make change somehow, and that people don't like what they're seeing because they don't know and they don't understand what they're seeing. Here's another example that you can get a feel for. You've got a bunch of people here that are, again, Uncle Sam representing America, right? He's saying nothing doing, right? We're not letting these folks in. You've got Catholics coming from Rome, okay? You've got Eastern European Reds or Russians. That's going to become a nickname for Russians if you are a Red. And then you've got people from Southern and Eastern Europe who loved their rum not being permitted here into America, and making it as plain as day. These folks are not wanted, right? Whether you're Catholic, whether you're from Southern Europe, whether you're from Eastern Europe, you're simply not wanted here. And these cartoons that you see here are expressions of things that people were really saying and posting about in real life. I mean, in the 1880s, 1890s, 1900, it's not uncommon to see this kind of a sign in the western part of America, in California. Japs keep moving. It's a white man's neighborhood. Japs keep out. You're not wanted. I mean, this is not uncommon at the time to see these kinds of posts up there. Remember, America's not a country that treats its people who are of ethnic minorities very well. And the same is going to be true of people that are immigrating into this country, not just African Americans. But many other groups of people that are not treated well either. So this is going to be kind of a common theme that we see Americans embrace for the last 130 years, especially at different times. Okay, so let's take a look here at this last section of how this manifests against Asians. Specifically, we target Asians more than any other group by passing a law that actually bans the arrival of anyone who's Chinese. Understand that concept. America's supposed to be the land of the free, home of the brave, and here we are saying that an entire race of people, anyone from China, right, an entire country full of people, cannot come to America. And those of you that are here, even if you're already here, you can't become an American citizen. So not only do we want to say, no, you're from China, you can't come. If you're from China, or of Chinese descent, I should say, and you're an immigrant here in America and you're not an American citizen yet, you can't even become one. And this is something we did in 1882. This is not like, when America didn't, is just formed. This is 100 years after we've been a country. And we make it permanent 20 years later. It's only supposed to be 10 years. And we say, we're going to make this permanent in 1902. And we're not even going to get rid of it until 1943. And the only reason we really get rid of it is because we need China to help us out in World War II in 1943, 44, and 1945. So this idea of America as a place where we treat immigrants as where we welcome them, I really want to challenge that idea in your mind, because America has not been kind to immigrants for a long time. We've been the land of immigrants, but we have not been the land that is necessarily kind to those immigrants when they are arriving, okay? So just kind of make sure you understand that concept in your mind as we go into tomorrow. I think we covered most things here, and we'll pick up with this where we left off, and we'll see you tomorrow.